Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Method to Our Madness podcast. I'm Stacey Merola, PhD, and I'm here with my co-host, Bill Pate.
Hello.
And today our guest is Dr. Bernadette Wright, and we're going to be talking about her book on knowledge mapping. So I'll let Bernadette introduce herself.
Hey, Stacey. Hi, Bill. Thank you for having me on the show. So I have been doing evaluation and related social research for over 25 years. Started in studying public policy, specializing in program evaluation, which is all about methods for evaluating public policies and social programs. So topic of your show is near and dear to my heart. And I've been working, in that aspect, mostly with nonprofit organizations for my whole career. So wrote a book on and did some work on knowledge mapping.
So what is knowledge mapping?
So that term has been used in like a lot of terms to mean different things, but the way we have used it is to mean basically it's a visual diagram of your understanding of whatever it is that you're working on. It could be your strategic plan, a program you're evaluating. It's been applied to a lot of different situations, but it's a visual diagram of the causes and effects. So that's basically what it is. It's a circle for each thing that's important, and then there's arrows to show where one thing helps make more of something happen, or helps lead to more of or less of something else.
And so this is different from a logic model in that it's cause and effect versus like inputs and outputs, or
Well, it's in a way a form of a logic model, but logic
okay.
models, the ones that we commonly see, there's like a 5 set categories of your inputs, your outputs, your long-term outcomes, things like that. And this is more, you just start with a blank piece of paper and it's, what is important to your specific topic and how do they relate to each other. And so then you need to come up with your own categories of how you're going to group that together.
Oh wow. So are there any sort of set categories within? I mean, it seems intimidating to start with like a blank sheet of paper.
So it depends on your topics. Like, so you may have like, you're starting with your document describing the program or something, you have some information and then so you'll create like an initial map, just like, reading. So our goal is that this will help by doing, A, B, and C, we'll get more of D and E, which will lead to F, and then those are your things. Or you can start with like a goal of here's what we want to achieve. And then now let's talk about all the things that help to lead to that, or what is going to happen as a result of that.
That's really cool. It sounds almost like freeing in a sense, because when I think of logic models, we think about it set up a very particular way, right? Left to right. And it's almost like we're trying to figure out things to fit into these boxes. But it sounds like you can really start from anywhere with like a knowledge map or a concept map, and then just kind of like, you're figuring things out and how they're related. So it's almost like organic in a sense of like just kind of thinking through the situation.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's different ways that the information on what goes in the map can come from. And one of the ways it's been used is for a group conversation where, each person is, like one person will suggest a circle or an arrow between circles, and then there's some conversation about it, and we see if the group, agrees that should be there or not.
Okay, so it sounds like this works well for like a collaborative working environment. Has that been your
Yeah,
experience?
yeah, yeah. That's one of the ways that it's been used, like teams at an organization planning an initiative that, people who are working together to come up with a plan that reflects their understanding of here's what we're going to do, here's how it connects to what we're going to achieve. But it also has been used in other ways. It can be used by, a researcher putting together that to show what you're learning from your research, whether it be from like doing interviews. I've used it in a study where we got information from interviews and surveys and other sources, and then we use that to map out, okay, here's what we're hearing is, what I broke it down into a bunch of like smaller maps that eat like 5 circles at a time, and to show here's what we're hearing about these things lead to this.
There's really no limit on the number of circles. Yes.
No, yeah, but so the limit is in people being able to understand the circles. So for practicality, if you want to be able to communicate it like at a conference or to a client or whatever, then you need to break it down into more digestible chunks and walk through it.
Is there any kind of software that you prefer using for something like this? I mean, if you're not using, like a big sheet of paper or a giant whiteboard, like flip charts or whiteboard, is there any software that like facilitates the development of this?
Yes, Kumu, Kumu is one that I've used that I've used the most, but there are a number of other softwares out there that do something similar.
Yeah, so how did you get into knowledge mapping? I know we've all like dealt with logic models, but like, we're not as familiar with the knowledge mapping. So,
Well, I was feeling like a lot of research was not being used like just in general in the world of program evaluation and social research. And that led me to like just on my own doing a lot of reading and all I could find about like different methods of how do we bring together the knowledge that we have. And yeah, not there seemed to be a lot of like ignoring all the research that had been done, or it not being really translated into, okay, now we've learned something about this topic. Here's what we've learned. And then that's what eventually led me to this. And I found it really useful, and I liked how it can apply to any type of knowledge from all different sources, from quantitative data, from group discussion, from interviews, anything.
so when was the first, do you know when the first knowledge map was created?
That's a good question. No, I do not. But it builds on research that had been done in a lot of different fields, and part of that is like in the science of, well, part of that is like in the world of evaluation. There have been a lot of different approaches to logic models, and that are more realistic, because not every, some people like see the traditional logic model as representing their program, but sometimes it is not going to fit to every situation. So yeah, and it doesn't show all the, in the real world, there's often a whole lot of crisscrossing arrows and of causal effect that go every which way. And so, logic models that do that. So partly it came from that in the world of evaluation, and then partly it came from like the science of how we learn, and that you can like look at the structure of your knowledge, and that if you understand more than one cause of something, if you understand something having 2 or more causes, that means you have a better understanding of it.
Are you aware of other disciplines that use maybe a similar technique to concept mapping or knowledge mapping? And it could be a different system or a different way of thinking about stuff. Because it sounds like when you're doing research, you're probably looking not just at the program evaluation literature, but looking more broadly for different social sciences, or like what I've discovered, there's a lot of crossover between different disciplines. And that's something that's been, I think, almost not discussed. It's like we almost can only talk about program evaluation stuff.
Yes. Yes, actually, one example I just thought of, I think it was more from the world of like facilitating group conversations. And it was a technique of visualizing, okay, here's what I hear the group discussing. And it doesn't have to be, evaluation related at all, but just, group conversations on a topic. And I've also seen that done where it's like you kind of look similar with circles and arrows.
As a concept map, a living document, kind of like you're supposed to go, revisit your logic model periodically. Do you have to revisit your concept map?
Yeah, I guess it depends on the situation, but yeah, I mean, the idea is for it to be something that's practical and that's used to help guide decision making. And so we would want to go back and see, okay, are we making decisions based on what we said in the map? Are we seeing the results we expected? If not, and let's make our map better, and add what we're learning that we didn't think about in the beginning. And you can even measure how your map is improving as you add more circles and more circles that are connected.
Yeah, in the last podcast, we talked a lot about spurious, variables and confounds. And I was just imagining that, if all of a sudden you found out something was being caused by this unknown factor that you hadn't known before, like, I guess you'd have to put it onto your concept map then, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Spurious. Yep. Spurious causes. Yeah. So the concept, the knowledge map or whatever you call it, it's our best understanding of the, at the time, and hopefully, as we get more experience, do more research, talk to more people, our maps get better, and we get better at understanding and solving problems that we're seeking to address.
What are some implications? Okay, so I do a lot of data work as both of you do too, but I'm in this program where I'm learning about business stuff, and my business advisor keeps telling me that that AI is coming to get my job, right? And so so I've decided to learn as much as I can about AI and how it can help me with my like workflow with like doing data so that I can theoretically, shrink that, 80% of my time is spent doing data prep. I could theoretically shrink that. And then as well as on the other side of doing analyses, shrinking the time that it takes going from output to a published report or a manuscript. So, with that in mind, how have you seen or would you anticipate generative AI to have an impact on concept maps, knowledge mapping? For example, I'm imagining, ChatGPT or something going on in the background, and on my other screen, little bubbles are popping up of like concepts and how they're connected. It's almost like drawing it for me. Are you aware of any efforts with AI, or what would you imagine if you haven't?
I haven't heard of that being done, but just hadn't thought about that before. But just thinking about that, I'm thinking it would be a lot like the automated qualitative coding software that I think is just, I've heard of that in kind of beta form. I don't know how advanced that is, but it would basically, be looking for, someone is saying that something, a sentence that seems to be suggesting that they're saying something helps cause something, contributes to something, things like that. And then that would be, aha, that's a causal statement. I'll add it to the map. And then finding like where now someone's saying something and it's the same thing as something that's already on the map, but maybe they're saying it in a different way. We can put that together as the same circle. I think it would take a lot. It would take a while for that to be, to be taught to an AI, but could be a potential. Yeah.
It'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Because that ties into my question. If you wanted to, how would you go about, like, what's the process of creating a concept map? Is there like an interview protocol where, so you are able to get these causal statements, or like if there was just a beginning evaluator who wanted to start using this on a project, how would that person do that without AI? Like,
We would suggest have more than one person do it, because then, anything you read, it can be easily taken different ways. So there's a lot of, things that are a little ambiguous. Some things are clearer than others. Like sometimes you actually see a published paper that has a diagram in it, and it's okay, we can use that, like, they have their theory of their framework for something. That's like a map in itself. But you more often, like, there's a lot of question about, okay, what's relevant to the topic to include, which circles are actually the same circle, which are different. And so no two maps are probably going to be exactly the same, but I think the important thing is that you've had, to be systematic about it, you've had more than one person look at it and you discuss what's different, like basically like qualitative data analysis. You document what you coded and how and why. Like, here's the quote that I'm using where I heard this causal statement, and here's what was the cause, and here's what was the effect.
Gotcha. I was trying to imagine, like, because we mentioned earlier it was like collaborative, so I wasn't sure if like you set up like a focus group with a group of people that know about the program and then start asking
Yeah,
them.
so
Yeah.
that's the other way. So yeah, so like I said, like it's there's different ways it can be used. So that would be if you're using it from existing data, but if you're
Yeah.
using it from the what's the experience of people in the room is the other major use of it. Yeah, so in that case, you would sometimes it would depend on the situation. You might start with some already filled out circles if you have an idea from other sources, like going into this of what's probably going to be included in the map, or you just start with blank circles and arrows. And it can be, if they're actually in the same physical room together, these could be physical pieces of paper that they cardboard shapes that they put on the table, and then they make a map. We've done it that way in
Oh,
workshops, or it could be done online with a shared screen where you can see the circles and arrows. And
very
then
cool.
to have like, a trained facilitator who can ask questions of like, to, clarify what they mean by that, and where things might be the same thing and things like that.
Very cool.
So how long ago did the book come out?
So I don't know, like, it was around 2020, I think. Maybe a little before that.
Have you had any thoughts like after you wrote it? Because not that I've done this before, but I would imagine having put together a book after it gets published, it's like, oh man, why didn't I put in that chapter? Or why didn't I talk about this? Or if there's been any changes in the landscape since it came out that kind of like would be a nice thing to like augment it with. Like, have you had that opportunity?
That's a great question. To be honest, I haven't been giving it that much thought.
No,
Yeah,
it's totally
I
fine.
don't really have ideas, but yeah, that would be great to know. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, maybe
I'd
maybe
be,
now
yeah,
AI and concept mapping, that'll be like the second edition or something.
yeah, yeah. Or they update newer examples of other people who've used it in their research or their work. I have heard of it being used with consultants and teaching consultants as a way,
Oh,
something that they can use to understand the organization they're working with and help them understand what they're doing.
Well,
oh, that's
that's
cool.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a useful tool, not only can you use it to help a client work through something to figure out, get the best minds in the room or everybody who's relevant, the necessary stakeholders to really understand a problem, like the complete thing, forwards, backwards, all around. But yeah, to even if somebody's trained in this or they've gone through the process, then it would help them to figure out how they can help others go through that similar process to really articulate their situation.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard of it that, yeah, like being used with, a facilitator
Mhm.
being hired to come in and help develop a plan for an initiative with teams that, working together, and they end up with a map, and that is like, here's our map to where we're going. And also, it doesn't have to be all circles and arrows. I've seen it like replacing it with little pictures to show what we mean by each thing, to make it more visually appealing and for a wider audience.
Are there any other best practices that people should use when they're trying to do a concept map? I know you mentioned having like a facilitator and multiple people. I don't know if there's any other tips you can share.
Yeah, there are. Yeah, we had a short tip sheet on that, and I'm not remembering, like it was like 10 tips, but I'm not going to remember very many of them right now. But yeah, I guess like making sure that each circle is actually a separate thing would be one, and not having like something lead to something that is basically the same thing. And you could just, if there's only one arrow between two circles, maybe they're like, actually, are they actually the same thing?
Oh, okay.
And I guess, the main tip is that it's good to have a good amount of circles on the map, to show that, because in the real world, generally things have a lot of different interrelated causes. So like having more than 20, like 25 or more is good. And then it's good to have a lot of circles that have two or more, a lot of those circles on the map, for a lot of them have two or more arrows leading to them. So if you have like a lot of circles just out in space, not connected to anything, you ask, well, why is this important? How does this connect to everything else that we're doing? So it helps to spark those kind of conversations about, why are we doing things and how does it all connect to help lead to achieving our big goals that we want to achieve in the end.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, because like in logic models, we think about exogenous factors that lead into or kind of set up our situation. But then you've got those other things where it's like, but this creates this thing and it goes out there. And it's like, but why? Like, or what's the purpose? What is the utility of that thing? And then you're right. It's like, then you start, it seems like a really useful tool, like you said, with like this list of tips. It helps you to then assess the map to determine what are useful activities, not useful activities, useful products, not useful products, so that you can focus the organization or the team on, it's like, well, what is the real let's boil it down to the essentials, right? And how they're connected and what needs to move things along, or what are some opportunities for, I guess, gaining efficiencies or things like that.
Exactly. And another example of that is if you see something where there's a loop, like there's 4 circles and then the arrows go like you do this and it leads to this and this and this, and then you have more of this. That's like a feedback loop where it's building on itself. So that could be an opportunity to increase efficiencies. Or if you have a circle that, has many, benefit, it leads to many beneficial outcomes, and that's like something that's particularly important.
So, can you think of an example where you went through this with somebody or you've heard of this happening where it really changed how people on the team perceived the entirety of the system, or it led to an interesting discovery?
I did hear from a colleague who did this, that with a group that they had teams working together to build a map for their initiative, and they were talking and they realized that they actually agreed, but they had thought that they disagreed.
Yeah, it's nothing like a process to kind of to get everybody on the same page. It sounds like. That's really cool.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking in other things about, developing a map, and it helps show that you're thinking about the situation is realistic. And like there's some examples of, like, if you have just one circle and that by itself is like having a whole bunch of beneficial effects, that's like a panacea, and that's probably not realistic. And like you have to explain how you're going to make that happen, or else, how are you going to do that? And also, or if you have, just one cause of something, then that's also unrealistic, because usually in the real world things have more than one cause.
So
Yeah.
some more, yeah. So you definitely want more circles are better.
Not a silver bullet or like other
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our product will save the world. Okay.
Exactly. Okay.
So yeah, the real world is complicated.
The real world is complicated.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
I love your show. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for listening. Yeah, so folks can connect with us on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram and Blue Sky. Yeah, and we'll put some links to, maybe Bernadette, you could share like a concept map that we can maybe share in in a link in the podcast notes so people can have a visual of it. And yeah. So, all right. Thanks, everybody.